Hey everybody, this is Adam with Up and Adam Comics. Just thought I would take a little time to kind of expand a little bit on my intro video and talk a bit about how I go about collecting comics and what that process looks like for me, what some of my goals are for the upcoming future in terms of collecting. And then I have a little unboxing I can do kind of at the end for a comic that I ordered. So, what I thought, first and foremost, for me, I'm a comic collector, but the priority for me is reading those comics. So, I love reading storylines um, and different arcs or different things like that or full sets. So I'm a big run collector. So I like to get an entire series or I work on it piece by piece. So sometimes uh for example, my biggest collection, as I've mentioned, has been Fantastic Four. I'm also was an Avengers big collector, so I have a pretty big run of that as well. But just to give you an example, um, for runs, sometimes like I may have like newer issues or a block of newer, more recent issues, and I may decide to go back some. I typically do that in kind of incremental chunks. And a lot of times, just not only with stories, but I like to, follow artists and how they have collected. So, um, with Avengers, I started, as I mentioned in my intro video, 221 was the very first comic that I picked up. And there are some things in that it was kind of like, okay, here's a new team that just started up. Well, I kind of want to learn what the older team was. So I kind of went back, and sometimes I think the anniversary or incremental year or runs used to mean more. So like issue number 200 used to be a bigger deal than um, issues do now. I think sometimes it might be the end of an arc. It might slightly build up to something, but it's not a big bang like it used to be. Or sometimes with legacy numbering, I think Wolverine has one coming up that's like issue number 8, and but its legacy numbering is blah blah blah, so they're making it into a thicker issue. But anyway, um, so I used to think sometimes I would go back like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have 200 and up, or something like that. And so I would sometimes approach things that way, but I also would think about like, oh, okay, well, who's the writer and artist team on this? And maybe I should start back with them. So with Fantastic Four, I was a big John Byrne fan. And so I was like, well, what was the first thing that he worked on with them? So the start of the run was like 236 for Fantastic Four, but he had some other issues before that. So, I would go back to that and, kind of incrementally go back. For Avengers, start off with that. And then I was like, well, I'd like to get the um, John Byrne, George Perez works, as big fans of both of them. So I kind of went back a little bit into the 180s, 160s, things like that. And then I was like, oh, maybe I should go back to the Kree Skrull War. And so that got me, or with the Neil Adams run. And so that got me back into the 90s. And then I was like, well, it would be really cool to get all the John Buscema Avenger stuff. So I kind of worked back from that. So I've kind of continued to do that. And that's kind of how have built a lot of my collections, is kind of like starting in one spot and kind of gradually going back a bit. So, but I will say that how I usually like to collect the books that I get is I really like to get the grails or key issues first, if at all possible. I feel like those are ones that are going to fluctuate in price a little bit more. And if I can get a key or something before it blows up, even more, like if they before they make announcements for um, MCU or DC movies or things like that, if I can knock off some of those different key issues, then I can fill in the rest as I go. Once I finish a run, my goal is to then like read it from the beginning. So I do like to start, and I remember when I was doing my Avengers run, and I got back to that Kree Skrull War, I think in '89, I think is off the top of my head is where I feel like I remember it starting, and or at least the Neil Adams run. And so I was like going back, and I was like, let me start from this point, and then read forward from that. I'm a little bit behind on my reading. I have collected a lot of things that now I've finished a whole series or a whole set of something. And now I'm a little behind on reading what some of that stuff is, but that is kind of my goal about collecting. So, how I identify those keys is I'm sure a lot of you know about this already, but I do have the CLZ app. Um, and the CLZ app is just a way, I was grandfathered in, I was an early adopter of that. So I had a one set price, but it is a yearly or monthly fee that you can sign up to be a part of that. I highly recommend it if you have a chance. It takes a while. If you have a big collection like myself, it takes a while to enter in all the books that you have, but it's really an easy way, especially going to cons, to just scroll through and find books that you need or holes that you're missing and that type of thing. So you can see like just my Amazing Spider-Man. Like I can go through and kind of look at which issues that I have. And you can also designate um, certain comics, and you can set up a comic, add it to your CLZ list and categorize it. You could either put it in your collection or you can put it into your want list. And so, or wish list, I guess is the terminology that they use. So, right now I have a wish list that are books that I'm probably more actively seeking to try to find. Um, I do have other books in the back of my head that are like, oh, if I find this, that would be good. But if you wanted to put any of those keys or anything like that that you have into your app, then you can kind of zero in, and it also helps you prioritize and kind of set your goals of like, I'm just looking for these books. Anything else I don't want to. But if you do have time and you want to look at some other things or backup lists that um, you can kind of keep that in mind for things that you might be wanting to look at. So that's kind of how I approach things. Now, I am not, like I said, I'm not a slab owner. Like I said, I like to read the comics, so I have a very few slabs, probably 10 or less, and all the ones that I've gotten are just like too good of a price that it was like I just couldn't pass up. And most of them are things that I already have in my collection, but it's just another copy of it. But I know, and I've never submitted anything myself to CGC or CBCS or anything like that. But maybe down the line, that might be something that I have to think about. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Matt Light's Comics. I might be incorrect there, but I think said that we are the or Alan for Comic Collector Geek, it said like we're the kind of current custodians of our collection, and that we will all pass on. Kind of depressing, but it will happen, and we will all have to pass that collection on. So getting something slabbed and that type of thing, I definitely understand it to protect the condition of it, and also to be able to help someone else be able to sell that pretty easily or be able to ascertain a value for it. It makes a whole lot of sense to me, but just not something that I do because I'm now at an age that I have to think about like what I'm gonna start doing with with some of that. And kind of a big goal of mine right now is to reread a lot of my collection that I have, and try to work through different runs from that. And if after I'm done with that and I'm thinking like I might not read this again, or I don't want to keep this for that long. I might look to sell a whole bunch. So right now, I'm probably like a month or two away from having about 17,000 comics, which is way too many. But so I'm starting that process to start, looking at what I have. And going from there. So, one thing I think when I'm approaching comics, and collecting certain issues, I do try to keep within a budget in my mind of what I would like to spend on a certain book. Um, and that can vary. It's like there are some lesser books that I just need just because I want to have. Um, and they may sit on my wish list for a long time because I haven't come across them or haven't come across them at the price that I want to pay. Um, and some of this can be like silly stuff that I'm holding on to. So, perfect example of that. Uh, when I was in high school, there was an issue of Fantastic Four Annual #1. And we had a comic shop in town that had opened up, and they actually had a copy of that, and it was $100. And as a kid in high school in the 80s, $100 is a lot of money. And I even remember at one point I got $100 that I was going to spend on comics. And I went there and I looked at that book and I was debating it, but then I was like, oh, I could buy a lot more comics. And so for that $100 than just that one book. So I was like, I'll forget it this time. So I always had that in mind of like I'd like to not spend more than $100 on that book because it would be kind of like me getting that one from way back when. So it took me a while, but I held on to that notion and I did get an annual #1 for $100. So not too long ago. So it was just one of those things that it was just in my mind of what I wanted to spend. So I usually come across that, but if I find something that's on my list or cheaper, than what I'm willing to pay or in my mind, then I'll just do it. I don't typically work on a set budget unless I'm going to a shop and I'm like, okay, I have 50 bucks. What can I do for 50 bucks here? So I might think that way. But typically, when I'm approaching things or if I'm trying to buy something online, I usually have a price in mind that I'm willing to pay, and I usually don't budge on that. It's okay. Those things will come around. But if something's too good of a deal and I find something that's a really good deal, I would typically jump on it just because I know I'm not gonna if it's been a while that I've been looking for a book and I can't find it at that price, um, I know it's probably going to be even longer. So sometimes I just go ahead and pick that up. So I thought I would talk a little bit about just kind of what's next in my mind in terms of collecting and what goals that I have to set out. So as I mentioned, I have a very few, I have a few books on my wish list on my CLZ, and some are current things, some are recent things that I'd like to pick up if I find it. Some of it's just like reminders, like, hey, while you're there, maybe check on these things. So I have a few books that I'm trying to get in my Avengers run. So I'm missing about 8 issues total, but they're all of the first 15. I am trying to I need 13 through 15, so I'm trying to get those before I go back any further. Fantastic Four, I have 4 issues that I need, 4 of the first 5 that I still need for my collection. Those will probably remain on that list for a long time. I don't see myself getting any of those. I have 1 issue. It's like a Hawkeye blind spot, #1. I'm trying to get that because I bought the preliminary art for that cover. So I just recently purchased that. It's Mike Perkins cover. And so I'm trying to find that book out there in the wild. I have one collection that I'm working on right now is Marvel Team Up, and this was just kind of one of those things. Like I started picking up a whole bunch. As a Fantastic Four fan, I was trying to pick up anything that Fantastic Four members were in, or sometimes it wasn't Spider-Man, it was Human Torch, that was the paired person. And so I got all the Human Torch issues, got a whole bunch of the other things, and before you know it, I started just picking up other things like, oh, I like this character. So I'm about a little over two-thirds of the way of finishing that collection. So I'm working on Marvel Team Up. Um, Tales of Suspense, I am thinking about getting um, the whole, I guess from 59 to 90 or 99 is the when Cap joins. Cap splits the book with Iron Man. 58, he actually appears in it. So I'm actually working on 58 through 99. And I'm over halfway there with that collection. So those are books that I just kind of keep in mind. And then a few things. I really enjoy Creature Commandos, so I really didn't know much about those characters. So there's a few Creature Commandos appearances that I'm looking for. So that's kind of what's on my main list. Now, other things that are kind of, like I mentioned, are kind of in the background of my mind for things. I've been really getting into more of the Marvel, Marvel and DC a little bit, Bronze Age horror. So I've really enjoyed reading a lot of those stories. I have a little bit of a collection of Werewolf by Night, Tomb of Dracula, and I'm working more on the Frankenstein's monster and supernatural thrillers because I've been enjoying those. Supernatural thrillers features The Living Mummy. And Frankenstein, of course, features Frankenstein. So I'm trying to get some of those books. And then I have a whole bunch of like House of Mystery and House of Secrets, just because I'm a huge Bernie Wrightson fan. And I've picked up all of those Bernie Wrightson books that he was involved in. But it's left some holes. And I have a few others, like some Neil Adams books and things like that, but the covers are great. The stories are fun to read generally. So that's a other thing that I'm thinking about getting into. So those are, my wife sometimes asks me, she's like, well, when does all this collecting end? And as people that are collectors or hoarders or whatever you want to call us, that it kind of doesn't end if you're truly into it, because one thing leads to another and you go down different rabbit holes of collecting of like, hey, I'm kind of interested in this character that I just read about. What else have they been in? And let me see if I can go back and learn more about that character. It's kind of, it's a lot of comic collectors, I think, um, are big readers and interested in history in a lot of ways. And so also that goes along with characters. So you kind of want to go back and learn more about different characters and different stories that they've been in or what has happened with this character. And so that's been a big piece of what I've gone about to try to collect. So let me know kind of your thoughts about how you go about collecting. So, are you a key person? Some people just like to collect keys. Um, I love to have some keys, but sometimes that's not my biggest goal. I remember one time recently I was working on the Inhumans Volume 2. I just wanted to read it's all Jay Lee art, and I hadn't read the whole thing, and so I wanted to read all of it. And I'm like, oh man, there's a key in there. It's the first appearance of Yelena Belova, and I'm like, oh man, I just wanted to read the whole book, but I ended up getting it. I set my mind about what I wanted to spend on that, but it was already after movies, and that book was blown up quite a bit. But it was kind of one of those, you know inconvenient. I need to get this key just because it's going to help me fill my run. So that's a little bit different. But some people just like to keep the keys and they don't really care about the story arcs or in older books in a lot of ways. a lot of times it was just one issue. It had a whole story in it. It wasn't like a 6 issue arc or something like that. So it made more sense, just to grab keys and you get the story within that. But I like to do runs of, how characters are going, how team progressions have been, and things like that. So I'm a sucker for that kind of thing. Um, One thing I thought I would do to kind of finish up this video is I did get a key that I was kind of hoping to get, and how this is a good example of a rabbit hole. So I was starting to read. I also have a bunch of omnibuses. It's also another way to kind of read through a collection pretty easily, but I'm still hanging on to the regular issues. But I just like to. Um, but I was reading the first Avengers omnibus, and actually first two Avengers omnibuses, and I was reading those from the beginning because I'm missing some of those issues, and I just wanted to start and continue on and start reading a whole Avengers run. And so as I was reading it, I was really interested in the Enchantress, and I was like, she's a great villain. And I know, she's done a lot of stuff with Thor, and I've read a whole bunch of stuff with her in that, but I was like, I need to get her first appearance. So I remember many years ago, I was at a con, and um, her first appearance is in Journey into Mystery 103. I went to a dealer. They had a 103, but at the time I was really interested in getting Hella's first appearance, which I think is 102. And so I said, no, I'll just take I'll get the 103 or the 102 because Enchantress doesn't really mean as much to me as Hella does. But now I've come around. I wanted to get the Enchantress appearance. So I have that here. So I ordered this off the bay. And for me, I am really of I'm definitely a big proponent of low key is better than no key. So, and not low key, the God of Mischief, but I like low graded books. I'm fine having that, just because I want to read the book. And as long as I can flip through the pages and it's not falling apart completely, I'll be okay with that. So, this is an example of something that, I mean, this book is rough. So but I did get a Journey into Mystery 103. And there's like a chunk missing out here. There's a chunk missing out of the top there. But I'm just excited to have the book in my collection. So, um, yeah, this book is rough. I mean, it is yellow pages, staples there. It's complete and attached. I mean, I'm happy. So I'm excited to read kind of this first appearance of Enchantress. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I know it's also oh gosh, what's his name? The Gladiator guy. I think this might be his first appearance as well. Um, but yeah, I just think Enchantress is a really cool character. She's kind of doing some cool stuff in the new Thor, Immortal Thor book that it's like they have her and Thor had a kid. And so that son is coming into play with some of the Thor stories. So I'm really excited to have that. So that's been a book I've been looking for a long time. And I got it for $40. So I was planning on I'd already seen a bunch of things that I was kind of watching some different books on eBay and other places, and they're all like 100 and above. And so I knew I was going to probably have to bite the bullet at 100, but when this new auction came up and I think it was listed at 50, but they were accepting offers, and I was like, let me just shoot my shot for a little bit. If they don't respond or they don't do anything, I'll buy it at 50. That's fine. But because it was so beat up, I was like, well, maybe let me see, try to save a few bucks. And so I put an offer out there and they accepted. So I was really thrilled. But I'm really excited to add this to my collection because this has not been a book that I have been able to purchase until now. So I'm excited about that. Um, Anyway, that's it for this video. Just a little bit of my ramblings about everything. But hope you enjoyed. And let me know what your goals are, and how you approach collecting to get those goals. Are you a run collector? Are you a key collector? I'd love to hear some of that. So make some connections with me, and leave some comments down below. Um, Feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I will talk to all of you virtually at some point later. Take care. Bye bye.